Right, working this time. I don't know what was happening there. Just couldn't get the thing going. Right. Right, that should be us this time. Gav, Marshall, you should put the link. Hopefully it's working all right. How you doing, people? Desophication is not a word, by the way. It's a Gav word. Gav can explain it when he comes around. Before anybody starts getting up on their high horse and going to the thesaurus and the dictionaries. Desophication is not a word, Dale, you big idiot. We know. We fucking know. Right. That is. Let's see if these links are working. Aye, we've got Marshall, you're here, all right.
Yep, live on YouTube, dude.
So, I'm prompting you live this afternoon. I'm just going to wait and Gav coming. I'll just say the usual for anybody that's coming across this that's new to it. We are just people who have looked into the claims that we live on a globe. We applied real science, which belongs to an individual, not an institution. Real science when it comes right down to it, you know, in simple terms. If we are making claims about the objective world that we all share, you're duty bound to demonstrate the claims that you're making. Okay, and when it comes right down to it with the globe, there is no demonstrable evidence, nothing practical that can back up any of the globe claims whatsoever. The only place that it seems to exist is on a TV screen and in textbooks with sophisticated argumentation. So it's just the same as any other religion or any other deception. Purely that, you know, it's a fantasy, it's nonsense. This fantasy, however, has been used to control people and suppress people and keep them in a place that, you know, the few wish them to be. So the people here don't represent any idiotic strawman claims. People seem to have this idea that in order for you to be refusing something as being true, you must have something to replace it. It's totally ridiculous. The reality of our situation is that we can assess the claims that were told to us, that we were browbeaten with as we were growing up as children into adulthood. We can assess those claims, and it does not matter if you assume them to be true for 30 years, 40 years, 10 years. When you come to a realization and decide that you're going to address these assumptions that you held to be true, that is intellectual honesty. And then if you decide to have a look at it and you decide there is nothing feasible to support it or to suggest that you should be placing any belief in it, then that's just the way it is. And that's the case for the globe. There is nothing to justify believing in a globe other than what you see on a TV screen. Now, if that's what you're happy with and you're content with that, if you're content to appeal to authorities and believe in authorities and believe what you see on your TV screen over your direct experience, your actual tangible reality, then that's up to you. You know, some people would say, you know, I'm not going to call you an idiot, but I'm going to call you an idiot. You're a fucking idiot. Take reality for what you can experience and what you can know and test for yourself. Not what somebody's going to tell you. It's ridiculous. So that's it. No cartoon flat pizza dishes or any of that crap here. The globe is a claim. The globe is bullshit. And anybody that wants to think they can prove the globe, by all means, bring it on. You're not going to manage it. We have been over and over it. We're not expecting anybody to come and show us this, you know, amazing proof of the globe. People like us done the work. People like us had to dig deep and go into your own belief system and edit out the falsities. And that main one is the globe. A hard process, not an easy thing to do. There's absolutely no incentive for any of us people here to disregard the globe just for the sake of it. Okay, so we understood it, we looked at it, and we refuse it. It's bullshit. The earth is level, provable, level, and everybody can verify that for themselves. Okay? The claims that we make here, that you can falsify if you so wish. By all means, go and find out how liquids behave. If you're going to come here and tell us that liquids bend, and you better show it, because as far as I'm concerned, and as far as everywhere I have searched, liquids don't have the capability to bend around the exterior of shapes and display the shape upon the surface. Preposterous nonsense. Okay, so I'm not going to get too much into that. I'll save that for another time. But that's pretty much it. So I'm waiting on Gav. Gav's got a wee presentation, as far as I'm aware, in regards to certain things. So where are you, Gav? Are you making a fashionable late appearance or what? Are you brushing your hair? What's going on? Marshall, you alright?
Yeah. Did you say you sent Gav a link yourself, or do I need to forward?
I did send it. Hang on. I just double check. It's the right one. Copy. Paste. It's trying to be fashionably late, I think.
Well, it doesn't hurt to show a bit of style in the fashion department, mate, does it? You're interrupting my sun time, Gav. Come on, man, let's get on with it.
Oh, me too. Gave up valuable sun soaking time for this. So. Right. Give me a minute. Who's this comment? Wait a minute. I've seen some comments filing here. David Pearson. Their brains don't warn themselves, obviously, i.e. like pain warns you that something is wrong. Surely you can read what they were saying in that sentence. Ha ha. No, David, I think you're just too stupid, son. You're absolutely missing the point. It was in reference to the whole mind-body debate. You know that issue where they don't really know what consciousness is, and there's this whole raging debate that's been going on for centuries about, idealism, materialism, dualism, in regards to mind-body philosophy. So that was the reference I was making to that particular article when they were talking about, the brain as being something separate from the entity, when they were saying the brain fails to warn them. So, I was suggesting, what are they implying? Are they implying a form of dualism? That the brain is informing them? Who is the them? That was the point. Obviously, it's went way over your head there, son. So I just thought we'd clear that up for you. I haven't watched any of your videos in months. I'm listening to the above and only heard the same thing. I don't know what the environment is that we exist in, although I believe it exists within us, i.e. everything is within consciousness. Quite a bold statement there to be making, that everything is within consciousness. What do you mean by that? Do you mean like a panpsychist type of everything is within consciousness? Could you elaborate on what you're trying to say here? Well, I find that you surely need actions rather than saying the same few things over and over again. Yeah, well, that's the way the world works. You formulate a desire and goals, and then you set out on a physical means to achieve whatever those desires and goals are that you've set for yourself. So, of course, physical world needs physical action, But I was referencing that again to the mind, which mind has to be referred to as metaphysical, because you can't take it out. It's not a physical substance that you can look through and go, all right, there's your thoughts, and there's your memories, and there's your stuffs there. The mind is referred to as metaphysical. The brain is physical, but the mind, metaphysical. Just for what I said, you can't take it out and shows it. It doesn't have any physical properties or qualities to it. Yeah, so metaphysical. Hope that clears it up for you, David.
All right, well, Matt.
All right, how you doing, mate?
Can't complain.
Nice one.
Hey, Marshall.
Hi, Gav. I see you've been catching the sun.
Aye, it's been great weather over here. The last week or something, the last 10 days, been great.
Fucking excellent, man. That's obviously not interrupted your preparation for this presentation, then.
No, not at all. No, it's been really cool. How about you? You had decent weather?
Well, Moscow's just white. So and we all know why, but we're not going to get into that because we got something to focus on today, right?
Yeah.
Hey, Gav, everybody's waiting on you, mate. Yeah. Spotlight's on you. What you got?
I mean, fuck yourself. Did you already explain our new word, desophication? Yes.
Well, I explained that it's a word that you invented, and you were going to explain it when you came on. You know.
All right. Okay.
Before we start correcting us and calling us idiots, you know.
It doesn't matter. I was just looking for something to express my wish to how should I say, bore through the sophistry and the deception and all the, stuff, and trying to find a word for the anti-sophistry, right? So I quite like the desophication as the deconstruction of sophistry. So, but yeah, what the hell?
Excellent.
Hey, listen, before we start, I just wanted to a few words on your video, The Cult of the Lunatics. So
yeah.
I must say that I thoroughly enjoyed your dissection, autopsy, analysis of cult behavior. I think it's really important that people see these things. I don't think I'm particularly good at it, but then again, I'm not exposed to it the way you are. Yeah. I'm not on Fuckbook anyway, so that's where it seems to happen a lot. But you see it also on YouTube as well, don't you? So, and I think it's hugely important that people see that kind of behavior, understand how it's used to try and disparage, discourage, to sow doubt and confusion, and all these basic attacks on the man, because I do firmly believe, Dale, that asking questions, and inquiring into the will or the intent or what the final outcome is supposed to be are valid questions that you can ask, right? So
I'm glad you brought it up. That's the whole point. What I've been saying. A lot of these things are based on my own experience, and everybody knows that's walking this walk what it's like to be involved in this. So you've got certain people can call them paranoias. You get certain cautious behaviour, and it's justified. And especially when people have been associated with me, I've got concerns about that. Especially when people are still viewing that there is an association. So again, I'm just going to reiterate. The questions and the points raised are based on my experience that I've never had any resolve over. And the focus of was purely that on attention and where these things are going. And I'm still getting the same poor victim mindset of people saying poor me, and attacking me, the man, when I've never attacked anybody's person or character, because I don't know any of these people, and I'm still getting it coming through in the comment section. That's absolutely pathetic. And these people are so blind. They're obviously just hearing a certain narrative or a perception of what they think that is that I'm on about, and not actually listening to what's being said. And they're still coming, acting, why are you attacking all of us? Acting like a big group of fucking wee children. Nobody's attacking anybody. Get a grip of yourself and listen to what's actually being fucking said to you, and then you might have some clarity so that things don't get this fucking mucky. So again, questions were asked in regards to intent and what's actually going on here, and that's it. Not about who the people are. No, show your face and what your character is and your personality and what your favourite colour is. I don't care about any of that. So, it's not justified that I'm getting these diatribes of attacks on the character, especially from people that don't even know me for fucking Adam. So it's pathetic.
Right. I mean, I've seen some of the comments that were in there, and attacking, let's say, blatantly people on the BTIC that that they're all fucking mindless, useful idiots, or I think I'm referred to as some academic fool. So I don't know this guy John Thor either, right? I don't really care to know him now after the display of his his whatever it is he's trying to say. Yeah, but it just annoys me as well that people who don't know you, yeah, don't understand who you are obviously not listening carefully to what's being said, are just kind of jumping on some kind of Stockholm syndrome bandwagon, yeah. And it's never been about that, right? You know, I mean, this platform for me has always been about empowering people, giving people, I don't know, better sense of discernment according to different levels of background expertise, right? Wherever it might lie, and asking people to come forward to do the same, because that's the only way to empower the individual. And I'm the same as you. All these kind of group things, you know, think tanks and communities and grouping, we've seen it fail so many times still, you know.
The parallels are there, mate. You know, it's the exact same thing. It's like, it's just the same as, you know, this journey I've had where I'm questioning the globe and its claims and its antics. Okay, so you question that and immediately you're met by ridicule. You're a fucking this, you're a fucking that. This guy's a fucking tattooed maniac, this, that, the other, blah, 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 blah. So it's exact same parallels as when I'm asking questions about the people who have brushed up alongside of me, their intent, their walk, what their content actually is. It's the same thing, and I'm getting the exact same response back again. So it's, you know, the parallels are there, although we're getting these people professing unity and selective cherry picking of love and companionship and respect and all that fucking crap. You know, I've not disrespected anybody because I don't know any of these people on a personal level. So it's just invented utter crap. It's like propaganda tactics that people really need to become aware of rapidly, right? Because these types of characters are going to continue to muddy the waters and try and drag things into a place that's just non-existent from our part. So they can continue to kick and scream and profess all this wonderfulness and unity and whatever else they want. You know, they're no addressing anything that was brought up, any of the concerns that were made, absolutely none of it. So, you know, they can keep crying and jumping on hangouts and, oh, look at us, we're so wonderful, all they fucking like. It's no reality. I don't buy into that bullshit. That's not what I experience from everyday life. So these characters, you're no kidding anybody on. You can keep it up all you like.
Well, that's the same way I see it too. And yeah, I had my personal experience as well. So, you know, I was there at the time and involved in those things. So I know exactly where you're coming from, man. Yep.
Yep. And again, they jump straight to this egotism and jealousy and all this unfounded, ridiculous bullshit. People are not even starting to go, jealous of what? You know, egotism about what? You know, I mean, where's the substance to why anybody would be jealous of these people? That doesn't exist. It's preposterous nonsense, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's all in the actions and not in the words. So I don't fall for all this fucking compelled speech, you know, fucking political correctness, all this crap, you know, sticks and stones don't break my bones and all that, you know. And anybody who still thinks that is just a wee fucking Wayne, yeah? They're a wee fucking baby, you know? Snowflake, call it what you will, you know, there's lots of new terms for it, but you know, and anybody who's seen your walk, Dale, and the actions that you have done, you know, should be able to see through that pish. You know,
hopefully, you know, hopefully. But at the end of the day, again, it comes right down to it. To be honest with you, I really don't give a fuck what people think of me. It's not about people liking me or liking any other character whatsoever. You know, it's about what's objectively true and what's useful to you, and that's it. Stand on your own 2 feet, walk your own walk, represent yourself. That's it. That's always been the message, and it's going to continue to be the message. So,
yeah,
you know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to labor the point, but you know, there was some examples in what you showed that you know were absolutely blatantly just fucking wrong, and you know, attacks on the Mandel, you know, and that's where you know I think you have to point it out. You have to point out that these are the logical fallacies, ad hominems, and everything else that these people are employing, and it's the same tactics in this whole fucking deception. So it deserves to be pointed out. It has to be pointed out, right? It's our duty to point it out, if you like, you know. I mean, there was one example in there, I think, right, in that, I can't remember which guy it was, I don't really care, but he was talking about you not giving benefit where benefit's due to a song. The truth shall set you free.
Yeah.
Now, if I just like to remind the people that that song was something that my little brother did, yeah, Alistair McMillan, yeah, and that, you know, Alistair is very much a person who is doing it for his own benefit. You know, he lives off music. He wants to do something about music. He's less interested in the flat earth than in making himself more known. Yeah. and that, you know, the ability or the to be able to use those songs was something that, you know, Alistair said, hey, anybody can use them. I'm happy that my songs are getting out there. Yeah. And it was something that Harry MacDonald, you know, took up, asked, got permission to use the songs. And none of us are going to go back on it. I'm not that kind of guy, right? You know, I'm not going to go back on my word. So he can use that song whatever he wants. But the thought that you were somehow not giving credit to it is a lot of bullshit, because Harry MacDonald was the guy making all the videos back then. Yeah. So, you know, people should be aware of those chronological sequence of events before they start spouting shite. Yeah.
Exactly. And again,
but anyway, that was just a small point.
Not going to labour it either, mate. That's exactly it. The chronology's there, so there's no need for us to keep going over and over it all the time. If people are really interested for whatever reasons, again, I have to highlight, don't get dragged into this. Again, this is based on my experience, and I'm asking these questions that come out in a public arena. I'm addressing it in a public arena. This is not about people deciding who their favourite character is and who they're going to side with. If you're entering into that, you know, you've lost the plot. That's not what I'm about. This is not about picking who your favourite idol is and who your favourite street interviewer is. It's me. It's the same guy as I've always been, asking questions the same as I would ask. Even if I would sit and hear myself, I'd be saying the same fucking things. So don't get caught up in this whole bullshit about having to decide and choose and two sides. There isn't two sides. You should be standing on your own 2 feet, discerning for yourself, use the information, whatever's useful to you, end the story.
Yep, absolutely.
So,
so let's just go on to talk about other things that we enjoy talking about and hopefully bring progression to the whole thing. So, so I've got a couple of wee points that I've been pondering and thinking on in the last couple of weeks. And, you know, I like reading through some old documents in mathematics and natural philosophy, because I think it tends to show exactly where this sophistry comes in, where the confusions lies, where the terminology in a descriptive science like mathematics is abused, and where that can be used to, let's just call it, condition and brainwash people into believing things that aren't true, right? So some of the things, I've done a little presentation, so let me just put my screen sharing on. Hold on, just give me a second.
See while you're doing that, I'm just going to, there's something on my mind. You know, I seen a wee, somebody put a wee meme up on Facebook about this new age spiritual bullshit about, you see from the world how you are within, and all this fucking garbage, like whatever you are inside, that's what the world's going to give to you, you know, and it's just total lunacy. So, you know, just to rebut these idiotic statements that come for this new age spiritual hogwash, you know, does an innocent child, you know, within, you know, somehow, you know, asking the universe to be abused? Is the innocent child somehow asking for bombs to be dropped on in its family? Is the innocent child asking to be bit by a snake or eaten by a fucking crocodile? I mean, you know, people just keep throwing out these wee one-liners and nice wee Facebook posts as if it's all lovely, wonderful, fluffy, hairy-fairy bullshit. And we actually look at it and critically analyse it. It's nonsense. You know, that's not how this world works. Doesn't matter what you are inside. Things are still going to happen out with or whatever you think's going on in your mind. So stop listening to all this hairy, fairy, fluffy crap. Sorry, I just had to get that in there because it was annoying me. Fucking sick of that shite. Oh, how you are inside reflects what you see in your world. You know, that's cack. And go and tell that to fucking innocent victims of abuse and fucking war. Go and tell them that. Or you somehow asked for it. Fucking morons.
Hey, listen, Dale, I'm just going to link back out and come back in because for whatever reason, the buttons to share screen are not visible to me anymore.
Well, this
so I don't know what the fuck that is.
I was having a real issue trying to get this going, to be honest with you, mate. I had to keep setting up a new one and it was saying, you know, unable, you need to keep trying. So, wait a wee second.
I don't think there's anything you can do. I should be able to just have a share button in my browser, but it's not there anymore.
Should be on the left of the screen, mate, aye.
Oh, exactly, but it's not coming up.
You want to just jump out and come back?
Let me just jump out and come back in, see if it's something to do with that.
Cool. It is full of fuckery, Justin, because you don't want to think for yourself, you know, this new age bullshit that all seems to be heading in the same direction for me about this fucking, ooh, you just go inside and what you wish for, the world reflects, you know, that fucking bullshit, man. It's fucking so annoying, grates on me. You know, these people with this self-righteous lovey-dovey cack, you know, it just doesn't add up logically or empirically or in any way, shape or form, but people keep trying to perpetuate it. You know, it's like just trying to turn people into jam that you can just spread about. Yeah, it's all fluff and loveliness. As long as you don't think for yourself and ask critical questions or lo and behold, upset anybody with your critical questions and points, because we don't want to upset the new age spiritual fucking wonderful gurus. You know, get fucked, every single one of you. All your wee idiotic statements can be refuted and torn to shreds in an instant.
I'm still having to get any buttons to share anything with. I don't know what's going on. Weird. Never heard that before.
Steve Owens, I've been trying that one for years, mate. I keep thinking I am rich and money just drops through the door. Maybe I'm just not aligned with the unicorn stars, and I don't know. Maybe I need to meditate and do a mantra better or something. I don't know. Don't know what's going on. Maybe the universe just doesn't like me. Maybe it's not only people that don't like the big angry guy in the shed with the tattoos. Maybe the universe doesn't like me either. No? Maybe the universe is going, doesn't matter how much you pray and access the pineal gland, fucko, you're not getting anything. Poor me. Open my eyes. I'm not, you know, rubbishing everybody's spirituality and aspects. You know, I'm highlighting some of these idiotic phrases and things that people throw out there and wee fluffy memes and stuff. It just annoyed me. So I thought I would express my distaste and contempt for it. Revel Mark II Seeker, how you doing, mate? I need to catch up with you. I've just not had the time, man. Michael Diaz, Kosha Cats, John Doe, David Gilbert, Jimbo, Jan Smith, Jonah Worms, how you doing? Jan Kwiatkowski, Tony Dixon, Rock Vibrations, how you doing? Fixing bike chains. Jamie Brown, Maggie M, Johnny Shelton, Pat Mustard, Dean Wright, how you doing? Jimbo, Weatherman 68, Project 84. Exactly. You know, the whole lot of that's muddied with fluff. Exactly, Trackmatic. I'm doing it wrong. So are all these other kids, apparently, that are getting blown up by bombs and abused by fucking morons. They're just no accessing the pineal gland and having the right thoughts. And some of these new age spiritualists are going to say they deserve it, because that's what they're asking for, so they're receiving it. Kazimierz Wankowski, how you doing? Decoding Truth. Gav, you any luck? Is it still messing you about?
I think I've got it now. I'll with you in a sec.
Cool. Jesus. That's it. Am I meant to say Jesus, or am I meant to say Yahashashawi or something like that? I don't know. I've seen so many people using that word. Sheeps and Neeps, how you doing, Des? Been in cool picks, how you doing? Alfredo Barrigan. E. McKinsey, GMCDXX. Riddle me this. Wishy windies. Is that it? Yashashi wishy my windies. They're dirty. My windows are dirty. That you, Gav, you sorted, aye?
Aye.
Sorry, man. Right.
Aye, no bother.
Hold on, I'm just going to present you so it doesn't keep clicking off of me. Right. Right.
Aye, so I wanted to kind of continue with some of our mind your language stuff that we did quite a long time ago. You know, the word level and you know how these terms are redefined in a mathematical way, which you can call sophistry, right? I mean, whether you go as far as to say it's deceit and stuff is something different, but put it this way: people have redefined those terms, those words. And they're redefining the use of our common language to make it appear to be something else.
Yeah.
And I'm saying appear because that's the word I want to look into.
Yeah. Sorry,
so,
can I just say, sorry, mate, just before you go, I mean, that's exactly the point. You know, if people are getting involved in their education and they're understanding these definitions and applying it to the way they're being taught, again, they're not actively lying. They're just, you know, they're just not understanding the subtlety of the language, and you know, they're applying it in the right way in regards to what they're being taught. So again, it's just this whole aspect that people would have to be actively lying, and it's not the case. So, you know, people involved in mathematics, they're understanding these definitions, they're agreeing to it, they're practically applying it to their equations and whatever else they're up to, and it's working for them in the language of mathematics. So it's not that they're actively lying in order to apply it to a big deception. You know?
Spot on, man. You know, as I say, I think that's where half the trouble is, that people don't have those skills in words and rhetoric and grammar and logic. We've talked about this often enough, and that includes mathematicians and physicists. You know, they are not immune to that, to the fact that they haven't had that upbringing either, so that they're just as easily fucked over, let's call it, you know, by these abuse of words, yeah, and language. Yeah. I was in the position myself. So the word I want to look at today is the word called apparent. Now you'll see this word cropping up in so many different pieces of text, right? And basically I'm talking about the words like appear, to disappear, appearance and apparition. They all kind of, you know, are part of the same root, or the same word. And you have to differentiate very carefully of the meaning of that word in the different contexts in that it's being used.
Yeah.
So there's examples of it being its own opposite, right? There's definitions in mathematics. There's definitions when we're talking descriptively about apparent motion. You know, we're told that it appears to move, right? But it's not the stars and the sun that are moving above us. We are actually moving, right? So in that respect, it's made out to be something deceptive or unclear, right? But there's also the use of the word, for example, when I say it's apparent to everyone, then it means it's absolutely evident and observable to everybody, yeah? And if I look at some of the definitions from Wikipedia, so I've just taken a screenshot, then there's two definitions that they give there. And, you know, when you look at them closely, they would appear to be absolutely contradicting each other, right? So we have the word apparent, meaning clearly visible or understood, and absolutely obvious, evident, plain, manifest, visible, discernible, perceptible. And then at the bottom, we've got it meaning seemingly, superficial, supposed, assumed, declared, pretended, feigned, right? So there's one word that is exactly its own contradictory in terms of its definition, right?
Yeah.
Now, there you go.
No, I was just going to say, you know, apparently, you know, Gav picks his nose and eats it. You know, I've heard that through the grapevine. So that's apparently, you pick your nose and eat it, Gav. But what would be apparent would be if Gav was on camera right now actually picking his nose and eating it, and then everybody would be able to see that that's exactly what Gav does. Yeah? So one is hearsay and utter bullshit, and one is self-evident, apparent.
Yes. Everybody's doing it, picking their nose. And
sorry.
No, absolutely. No, I think it's just clear. So there's one word that has two different meanings, right? And here's another from another online website, right? Just to show people that I haven't cherry-picked anything, right? It was increasingly apparent, yeah? Or it means seeming to exist or to be true, right? But now I'm just going to go to the mathematical definition of what apparent actually means. And if you look up something like apparent angle subtended at the eye, then you'll get a whole lot of things around visual angles. And visual angles are then basically what it is when you look at something. So if you look at something and you try to define the separation between two stars in the sky, let's say, yeah, then you will automatically, from the way that you are built and the eye that you have, you will notice a visible separation between the two. And that separation between two objects would be your visual angle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to go into this in too much detail, but the very fact that the visual angle is meant to be something that is apparent is also something that if you look into these Wikipedia definitions, you'll see that they specifically bring up the point about terminological confusions, right? So in astronomy, the term apparent size refers to the actual angle or the angular diameter, right? But if you look at things like experimental psychology, then apparent is something that is a subjective thing, yeah?
Yeah.
So we basically have those different meanings of the one word. Apparent can be obvious. It can also at the same time mean only seemingly or, you know, unclear. And from a purely mathematical definition, what it actually means is the angle subtended at the eye, the visual angle seen by an astronomical instrument or by your own eye. Yeah, that is what the word apparent means. Yeah, and then if you start to look into a whole bunch of different subjects, whether it's astronomy, optics, mechanics, vision, psychology, you'll see that word apparent being used in many different contexts. Yeah. And the word is very ambiguous in a lot of cases. I would contend that it's also nefariously used, deliberately used, right?
Yeah.
To bring about these contradictory things or to have this dissonance that comes with people believing things that shouldn't be believing in. So, you know, an example would be the ecliptic, where the sun appears to move with respect to the fixed stars, yeah? As seen from the orbiting Earth, the little picture on the right-hand side, or the sun's apparent motion against the background of the fixed stars. Now, looking at that one sentence, you could either think, okay, the sun appears to move, but it's not. It's us that's spinning. That's one interpretation of it, right?
Yep.
That's what they like to tell us, yeah? You can also think, though, that the sun's apparent motion is exactly that. The visual angle measured during the course of a day as the sun goes across your observational visual field, yeah? And that apparent angle is really a mathematical term that defines also some of the things that I want to get into in a second, namely spherical astronomy. Yeah. So what I'm trying to point out is that these words, you have to discern very carefully how they're being used and where they're being used and what their actual meaning is. Most people will think, oh yeah, apparently, yeah, it only looks that way that the sun's moving. It's us that's rotating, yeah, or spinning on our axis, or it's us that's going around the sun once a year that is causing the sun to appear to move, yeah? But mathematically, all we're doing is measuring the visual angle of the sun as it moves through the day. And as we all know, and our common senses tell us, we ain't fucking spinning. This place is stationary and fixed. And yes, the stuff is moving above us. How it's doing it, I'm not sure. I'm not going to speculate. But what I do know is that the pish they're telling me that I'm spinning is totally nonsense. And these words are being used to confuse me, yeah, or confuse us, yeah. So I'm just going to take away this one and go to this book called A Manual of Spherical and Practical Astronomy, right? Can you see that still, eh?
Right.
Right, okay. Now, before people get worried that I'm actually going to go through this 700-page book, I'm not. What I want to show is that by looking at the abstract and the preface and the introduction of these books, you can actually spot the sophistry without being a mathematician, right? And that's what, you know, if I look at a book, then if you don't look at the mathematics in the equations, because where the sophistry is right at the start in the first principles, the axioms, the assumptions of what they're trying to do. And there's some good examples in this that I'd just like to step through. Yeah, it's only a couple of pages, so bear with me. Yeah. So this is a book written in 1863, so quite a long time ago. Yeah, 1963, 150 years ago. Yeah, and by a professor of mathematics and astronomy at Washington University, St. Louis. Right now, this book, if I just look at some of the chapter, let's say the index, it should be coming in a second, which I just want to flip to. Here it is here. So if you guys just have a quick butchers at some of the contents here, right, of spherical astronomy, you'll see it has a lot to do with the celestial sphere. So that's the big dome-like structure that we see when we look out at the night sky. It has to do with the ephemeris, yeah, which is all these big star catalogs, yeah, where people, you know, have cataloged and tabulated the movements of the little luminaries in the sky, yeah, and on the basis of tabulating them over a long period of time, they can make predictions. It's got nothing to do with the mathematics. I'll say it again, just for people. If you look at something close enough and you record it over hundreds of years, then yes, you will be able to predict when something comes again, right? Yeah. Because it keeps reoccurring. Right? Yeah. It's a periodic thing. I know when the eclipse is coming, not because I have a mathematical formula that proves it in any way, but because I know from looking at it long enough that it's going to repeat itself. Yeah? Yeah. That is a star catalog, right? Clear and simple. Then there's all kinds of tough talk here about the figure and the dimensions of the Earth and the reduction of observations to the center of the Earth. I'm going to come back to that because it's quite an important part. But this book would probably have been used by anybody in the 1850s who was going to sea. When I say sea, I mean ocean, traveling the world's ocean, you know, ruling the 7 seas of Britannia and all that pish, right? To do that, you would have had to had knowledge of spherical astronomy and of trigonometry to be able to find your position on the sea, right? And you would have done that by astronomical observations, yeah? And there's a whole bunch of stuff in this book of how to do that. You can see here by the pole star, for example, everybody knows if you measure the altitude of the pole star, then it tells you what your latitude is, right? Yeah. On a supposed sphere, yeah? So all these chapters will help people navigate around the world, right? And there's a whole bunch of stuff, right? Finding your longitude by all kinds of ways, finding your place at sea, meridian lines, and this is quite an extensive, you know, dictionary. It's more of a reference work. But if you were seriously looking to navigate around the world across the sea, you would need to have some of these tools here, right? Yeah. Now, I'm just going to skip to basically the first couple of pages because I think this is really important that people understand this, right? So, spherical astronomy, what the fuck is it? Let's just look at this first paragraph. From whatever point of space an observer be supposed to view the heavenly bodies, they will appear to him as if situated upon the surface of a sphere of which his eye is the center. If, without changing his position, he directs his eyes successively to the several bodies, he may learn their relative directions, but cannot determine either their distance from himself or from each other. Yeah. A really important point. Spherical astronomy only has to do with direction, nothing else. It's the position of something when you look at it in a supposed celestial sphere, and you're looking at its position on the sphere. Yeah. Now, I don't believe in the word heavenly bodies. I've got no reason at the moment to assume that they're bodies. I've never been. They can tell me a lot of stuff, but I don't know whether the sun is a body or not. Yeah. What they do in this second paragraph then, though, is and I would agree wholeheartedly with this first paragraph without the word bodies, that yes, that is the way I see things.
Yeah.
And yes, from a purely geometrical perspective, I cannot tell if something is far away and is really small, sorry, really big, or whether it's close to me and really small. If I hold a penny in front of my eye about whatever arm's length away, it will be the same size as the sun in the sky.
Yeah.
So what is it? Is the thing close, or is it far away and really big? It is impossible to tell geometrically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's why that first paragraph, as far as I'm concerned, is correct. The second paragraph, they start to talk then about the position of an observer on the surface of the Earth is constantly changing. Now, this is obviously where I don't agree. Yeah. In consequence, the diurnal motion, or the rotation of the Earth on its axis. So that's where they're trying to tell us, okay, we are spinning, and that's why the stars appear to move. Now, the only other option to that is, no, we're not fucking spinning, and it is the stars that are moving, This guy's taking the stance that, yes, he's on the surface of the Earth, and because it's spinning and because it's going around the sun, his position is changing, so he's going to see things differently, And he goes on to say that the changes produced by the diurnal motion in the apparent, there's that lovely word again, relative positions or directions of the heavenly bodies are different for observers in different parts of the Earth, and can be subjected to computation only by introducing the elements of the observer's position, such as latitude and longitude. So that's where, mathematics would have us believe that we're on a sphere, we're on the surface, and we can pinpoint our position on that sphere through two coordinates, namely latitude and longitude. And I'll get to that in a second as well, because it's quite interesting the way it's shown in this book. Let me just go through the paragraph though. But the changes resulting from the annual motion of the Earth, as well as from the proper motions of the celestial bodies, may be separately considered. Very important phrase, because you can separate the geometry of position from the geometry of motion and time, which is exactly what they've done. Mathematics concerns itself nowadays with the geometry, and physics concerns itself with motion. And because these two things have been separated, physicists don't necessarily know geometry. You probably won't find a physicist alive today who would understand this book, or be able to really go through the theory of what the mathematicians meant. I may be generalizing, there probably are a few physicists, but you get my point.
Yeah.
Because they've separately considered these things, and the directions of all the known celestial bodies as they would be seen from the center of the Earth, again, very important, from the center of the Earth at any given time, may be computed according to the laws which have been found to govern the motion of these bodies from data furnished by a long series of observations. Exactly what I was saying a second ago, because you tabulate things over a long period of time, then that's where the data's coming from, that people show what these motions of these bodies or of these luminaries are. I'd rather refer to them as luminaries, I think. So that it's got nothing to do with the mathematics behind it. Where this is coming from is tabulation of looking at things for a long time.
Yeah.
And here's a very clear separation. The complete investigation of these changes belongs to physical astronomy, and that's where they would consider distance and magnitudes as well as the direction. But spherical astronomy treats specially of the directions of the heavenly bodies. And in this branch, therefore, these bodies are at any given instant regarded as situated upon the surface of a sphere of an indefinite radius described about an assumed center, right? So there's a very clear separation of the geometry of spherical astronomy, which is talking about spheres, position on spheres, and physical astronomy, where they're trying to tell us what the actual distance and the magnitude and how big these things are, So very clear separation. And you've heard me saying this before, and I don't want to, well, I will labor the point because it's important, is that a sphere is not the same as a ball. A mathematical sphere is a two-dimensional geometry that is not the same as a three-dimensional physical ball.
Yeah.
Spherical geometry is done nothing else other than redefine straight lines to be great circles on a curve, right? Curved segments. And a redefinition of what parallel means, but it is still a two-dimensional geometry, and you can go from planar geometry to spherical geometry with the swap of these two definitions, and nothing else will change. Your equations will stay the same. You can transform between one and the other without losing any data or integrity. Spherical geometry is the same as planar geometry. So, and I just want to stop there and labor that point a little bit, because I see people still confusing this issue, saying, oh, but we navigated the world. That's only possible if the mathematics was correct and it really is a ball.
Yeah.
No, it's correct because the mathematics of a sphere are two-dimensional mathematics, yeah? And not because it means that we're on some three-dimensional ball floating in a vacuum, right? And anybody who wants to deny that, I urge them, just look at a few of the books, go back in time, pull these things up. You can even look in Wikipedia. They've got a very clear differentiation between what's a two-sphere and what's a three-ball. The fact that you can navigate around the world has everything to do with spherical mathematics. That's an absolute given, but it doesn't mean we're on a ball, right? Yeah. And any mathematician will confirm what I'm saying, right? So all the globe people out there who still believe that mathematics is proof, you really want to go away and have another look at it, yeah? So I just want to, there's just one paragraph and a footnote that I want to go through, and then I'll relieve you guys from this murder of mathematics. But I just want to make sure that people understand what a spherical coordinate is. So the direction of a point, so any point in, in our physical space, right, can maybe expressed by the angles which a line drawn to it from the center of the sphere, or point of observation makes with certain fixed lines of reference. Now, this is a really sneaky bit coming up now, but since such angles are directly measured by arcs on the surface of the sphere, the simplest method is to assign the position in which the point appears when projected upon the surface of the sphere. Now, I don't know whether this is complicated, so I've got a little video that I hope will help.
Yep.
Which is something I did here quite a while ago in a program called GeoGebra. I'm just going to scale it back. So I want people to understand what it means. There's a sphere. There's 0 is the center of that sphere. And I've drawn a spherical triangle on here with A, B, and C, right? So 3 arbitrary points. Now, if I look at exactly those points, you can see that if I cut that sphere with a plane, then that plane goes through the arc segment BC, right?
Yeah.
And if I do this with some of the other ones, that one, I have now drawn a plane going through the center of the sphere that is cutting through the points O, A, and C. And the arc segment CA is now part of that circle that is being left behind by those planes. So I'm just going to move this video forward a little bit so that it can become a little bit clearer. I'm going to put the circles on there. So these are the great circles that you can see. And I can change some of the coordinates on that sphere. For example, I can move A or I can move B up and down, yeah? And you can see that the measure, this arc, the arc BC and the arc CA down at the bottom are actually exactly the same as the angles that are being subtended at the center of this origin, right? Yeah. So that whatever, if I make those angles bigger, it really is the same geometry as this spherical wedge, right?
Yeah.
And that's where the trickery comes in. So if this was a real object, like an axe, let's say, an axe head, then the angles subtended at the point O by each one of those lines, OB or OA or OC, any of the angles in between them can also be measured by the arc lengths of the great circle segments. Yeah?
Yeah.
So that's the connection between the two-dimensional spherical mass and the three-dimensional ball mass. The angle that I measure at the center of that sphere, if it was a real planar angle by a wedge, something that looks like an axe head, it's exactly the same as if I measure the lengths of these arcs on the sphere. And that's why it was so useful at navigation, right? Because what you were seeing can then be measured basically using spherical geometry, and all the problems that you had in navigation were basically reduced to solving this triangle. If you knew one angle, then you could get the other side, so you could find out what the length was, or if you knew three lengths, you could get the angles. So basically, if you're navigating anywhere, then what you're doing is trying to solve a spherical triangle. And the sneaky bit is that this spherical triangle is measured using arc lengths of a sphere, but it's the same geometry that you would have on a 3-ball if you were measuring from the center of the sphere.
Yeah.
Now, I hope that's clear, and maybe people might want to revisit this afterwards and mull through what I'm trying to say. I know it might be, I don't know, too quick and a lot to take in at one point, but just to go back to what this piece of text said. So we're drawing a line from the center of a sphere or a point of observation, and we were using certain fixed lines of reference, and then came this sentence, but since such angles are directly measured by arcs on the surface of the sphere, the simplest method is to assign the position when projected upon the surface of the sphere. And that's exactly what I've shown there. I've basically shown that the angles at the center, right, from the lines drawn at the center, are actually measurable by the arcs on the surface of the sphere. So that's the 3-ball, in this case, from the center of a ball, if you like, looking out, is basically the same geometry as a 2-dimensional sphere where I'm using the arc lengths on the surface of the sphere. I just want to go through this last paragraph and then we're pretty much done. But so every single projection, so you hear a lot about this all the time, astrolabes that were used for navigation. There's all kinds of different quadrants. Everything that people have used is based on this idea of projecting from a sphere. And there's only really 2 ways to do this. You have basically what's called a primitive circle, and you have what are called secondaries. And basically that's what we would normally call the equator, for example. And secondaries would be these longitudinal lines, yeah, that you can see when you're looking at the globe model. So basically you have 2 spherical coordinates, with one is the distance of the point from the primitive circle, and the other one's the distance intercepted on the primitive between the secondary and some other one. And you have to assume what is the origin of the coordinates. I'm just going to draw I'm just going to show another little picture here. So just to make this clear to people. Here is, if you like, these 2 coordinates. So one coordinate is the length of this arc, which we would call altitude, up to where we can see a visible star. And the other one is from some reference point like north, where we say, okay, I turn to the right, let's say 45 degrees, and then I tilt my head backwards another 45 degrees, and that's where I'll find that star in that position. So this would be an example of a coordinate system based on that principle which was just shown. If I go back to it again, the principle is always the same. You suppose that you have some primitive circle, and then you refer to that circle by finding out where the secondary circles pass through it. Now, in physics, you can do all kinds of different coordinates. The one I just showed was the one called the altitude and the azimuth. And this is where I find it very interesting, this next. In this system, the primitive circle is the horizon, which is that great circle of the sphere whose plane touches the surface of the Earth at the observer. And there's a little asterisk here, which I'm going to go into. But what's interesting is this: the plane of the horizon may be conceived as that which sensibly coincides with the surface of a fluid at rest. Now, basically what they're saying there is that if you look at the big wide world of oceans and seas and large standing bodies of water, then yes, that can be conceived as your horizon if you look out towards it, i.e. water is fucking level, right? It's planar, yeah? And if you're standing looking at it, then it will in fact match your horizon. But one of the things that's really sneaky here, and I really want to point this out, even so that mathematicians can also see this. This little star here, where they're talking here about the circle of the sphere whose plane touches the surface of the Earth. I'm just going to go to this little asterisk at the bottom, and I'll just make this a little bit bigger. Oh, that's too big. So, in this definition of the horizon, we consider the plane tangent to the Earth's surface as sensibly coinciding with a parallel plane passed through the center.
Yeah.
Now, basically what they're saying is that if we consider the radius of the celestial sphere to be infinite, so really, really far away, in galaxies far, 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 far away, then the radius of the Earth can be taken to be 0, right?
Right.
So they're basically doing away with the whole idea of the radius of the Earth from the center point to the surface can be completely ignored in this definition of the horizon, right? Which is very convenient for them, of course, right? Because that way they can use the same projection of the sphere from the center of the eye to be able to use their sophistry. Yeah. And it's very similar to the same fallacy we see everywhere else, Dale, that, you know, that they assume light rays to be so far away that they're parallel when they come in. They're basically using the same trick here in mathematics to redefine where the horizon is and to completely ignore the theoretical radius of the Earth. Yeah. They're basically saying we can forget it because it's so small as compared to how far away the celestial sphere is, that we don't need to worry about it anymore. Yeah. In general, any number of parallel planes at a finite distance may be regarded as marking out upon the infinite sphere the same great circle. So it doesn't matter whether I'm using a plane on the surface, like a tangent plane on the surface, or a plane cutting through the center, or any other plane in between. They're basically saying that they can all be considered as one and the same thing, right? Yep. Because we're in spherical geometry, we're only looking at direction. So that is, all parallel lines or planes must be regarded as intersecting the surface of the sphere in the same point or the same great circle. Because everything's so far away, they're all going to meet at the same point, yeah? And again, the fallacy is believing that everything is so far away. Right? It's the same fallacy we see again and again. The point of the surface of the sphere in which a number of parallel lines are conceived to meet is called the vanishing point. Oh, what a coincidence. Yeah. That perspective and vanishing points is so deeply ingrained in the terminology of spherical astronomy, right? Yeah. And the point of the surface is conceived to meet the vanishing point, and in like manner, the great circle in which a number of parallel planes are conceived to meet may be called the vanishing circle. So if I was to go back to thinking of the hula hoop that I have round my eyes when I'm looking at something, right? I can rotate 360 degrees. I can see a flat horizon. If I rotate on my, do an about turn, so to speak, then that is what they're referring to as the vanishing circle. And the vanishing point, they're basically doing away with the radius of the Earth so that they can use the celestial sphere, which is two-dimensional spherical geometry, to navigate around the world based on tabulated positions of stars. Yeah. And it's very, for me, this is very telling. You see perspective involved in here. You can see how that they're confusing the definition of what horizon and what these terms, these coordinates are, and you can transfer between the two. And that's all that they're doing when they're doing this, how should I say, mathematical sophistry and telling people it has to be a sphere because we've navigated the world back and forth, right? And I just want to make clear that if you look very carefully at the words being used, don't even go into the mathematics. So don't bother about all the stuff that comes. Just look at what their assumptions are and question them. That's what I'm trying to make people aware of.
Excellent.
So I hope that wasn't too long-winded, my man.
No, I'm still, I mean, same as everybody else, so the majority watching this, mate, I've still got a lot to learn in regards to this. So again, it's invaluable to me, that you've got that knowledge and you can share it. I'm starting to piece wee bits together with it. So, questions I would have, I mean, when they're saying this, you can do away with this. If you're trying to navigate and you have to negate the radius of the sphere, so again, you're just assuming level, you're just assuming a plane. But what I'm kind of getting for that, does that then suggest, because I've heard this said a number of times, that, or does it, I'm asking you, does it point, or am I missing the point altogether? Does it point to the possibility that what we see as the stars and the luminaries are different to each subject depending on where you are? Like, they're somehow aligned with your specific position, and it moves relative to where you are. I mean, I don't know if I'm way off the mark with that. I don't know if it's even pointing towards that, but do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, I do understand what you mean. So, I mean, what they try and tell us is that by looking at the stars, we can locate exactly where we are on this supposed sphere that we're living on, right? Yeah. That's what they're trying to tell us, right? So by looking at the stars, by cataloging, by making those observations, we can basically make one field observation, which we measure with our physical, instruments, and we find the separation. And then we can go away and look at a catalog of tabulated catalogs. And if we know the instant at which something is being measured, i.e. if we know the time it's being measured, then we can use the two of those things, the field observation and the star catalog, and to bring it together and to pinpoint our position on a supposed sphere. That's one way of looking at everything. The other way of looking at it is what we've said, multiple times. If I walk around something, then I'm going to see things at different positions all the time. If I'm in Scotland, I'm going to see different stars than I will if I'm in Spain, right? Yeah. Just because of the very fact that, yes, I am in a different position, but because of the way things appear to me, right? And again, we're back to the angle that I'm measuring. It doesn't mean that the thing's curved, right? I could be on a flat plane looking at certain things, and I am basically seeing those things because of the way my eyes work and because of the position I'm in. The situation of my eye relative to these things is the other way of looking at it, and you're on a flat plane. So there's no reason. So they'll always jump to this, okay, it'll show you, we can use these measurements to show you where you are on a ball, if you're upside down or on the top. But the other way to look at it is you're on a flat plane, and just because I'm going away from you, then things will fall in your visual field, and I will appear to be lower than I was when I'm getting closer, right? So I think that's the question you were trying to ask, whether it has a certain meaning, or did I misunderstand what you were asking me?
No, you gave me a bit more clarity there. I was just kind of waffling, trying to make sense of it. Again, it's not easy for me to grasp this. I've never had a background in any of this stuff. So, as I say, I just understood the language in an overview kind of sense, but the expertise level, I've not got a clue. So, I'm learning the same as the majority, mate,
Well, I mean, I think that's what I'm trying to say, that, if you look at the introduction, the preface, the table of contents, the assumptions that are generally at the beginning of any book, then I think that's the most important thing that people need to discern, to dismantle, or to desophication, right? deception, because you won't find the mistakes in the mathematics afterwards. That's where, you know, hundreds of mathematicians will have pored over these equations and would have found any mistake in them. But where they don't pore over, what they don't look at closely enough, is the assumptions that are being made. Here we can see in this book, we're basically making the same assumption that we make all the time, that stuff is so far away that the radius of the Earth can be ignored. And it's the same fallacy as light rays are parallel because we know the sun is 1 billion miles away. And then use that, you know, for example, that Eratosthenes, right? The measuring of the stick. It's the same fallacy in geodesy. It's the same fallacy being used in astronomy. And those things all come back to the same mathematical sophistry at the end of the day, which is what I'm trying to point out. And I'd love a mathematician to come along, or even somebody who believes in the globe, who thinks he understands mathematics, to come along and discuss it. You know, let's rebut this stuff. Show me where I'm wrong. Show me where, you know, these assumptions are correct to be making. Yeah, because you can't make those assumptions, Del. Yeah, that's you already believing in the vacuum of space, and that, you know, you're making a base assumption. So it's circular reasoning, right? You can't say that mathematics reflects reality properly, because they're making assumptions that are not observable and not directly within our direct experience. Yeah.
Spot on, mate. Right. I mean, even just looking at some of the diagrams that they use, you always see that, you know, it's a planar surface and measuring angles. I spoke to this about the other day, the whole, you know, the Masonic compass and square, and what that actually is representing. You know, the squares for Earth, and the compass is, well, just as you pointed out, for thank you, pinpoint location and astronomical movements. Am I right? Is that right?
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
So, you know, even just in a simple term, looking at the diagrams and how these things work, it's assuming a plane, and then you're measuring the angle from your position to where these things are. You know?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, you can see it all the time, and there's lots of documents and books and manuals about, you know, whether it's how to fly, you know, where they're assuming that it's a plane level surface, and there's this interchangeability between heliocentrism and geocentrism, which physicists agree you cannot tell the difference, right? Both of these things are equally, you know, how should I say, equally true, if you like, because there's no way to be able to tell the difference from a mathematical standpoint. Yes, from a physical standpoint, we can sit here quite clearly and say, I ain't fucking spinning, right? And I know I'm not spinning because I trust my senses. But from a mathematical perspective, you couldn't tell the difference between looking at it one way or looking at it the other way, right? And but mathematics proves nothing. And I don't weary in trying to make sure that people understand that. I see one guy, and I'll mention him specifically, Wolfie6020. He's got a little video competition. He's trying to do a search and rescue mission, and he's basically challenging flat earthers to come up with a flat Earth map that would allow them to find somebody at sea, right? Along the lines of, haha, the flat earthers don't have a map. The globe map, or the globe sphere, we can pinpoint people at sea and rescue them. So again, we must be right. It's a ball, right? But if people understand what I'm trying to say, I can switch between his spherical version and the planar version with a very simple transformation. It's not even difficult. There's a couple of sines and cosines in there, right, that look scary, but there's actually no difference. So whatever spherical solution he finds to this challenge, right, and somebody says, this is my map, I'll just say, take this mathematical transformation, change it into planar coordinates, yeah, and hey, that's my flat Earth map. And you know what? It'll find the person exactly the same as he can, because the mathematics is no fucking different, yeah? So, you know, again, you know, I'm pointing to that guy's channel because he tried it a year ago, you know, putting out this red herring of trying to get people to make a flat Earth map, whereas the reality of the situation is you don't need to redo the mathematics. It's already there. I've said this before. You know, what they use to prove their spherical globe bullshit, we can use exactly the same mathematics if we slightly redefine the terms and the axioms, and they work just as well for us too, right? So there is no dichotomy. Yeah?
Which is probably where they originated in the first place, and the spherical nonsense came later. You know, because they keep invoking this fallacy that all these ancients and people back then, you know, assumed a globe. Well, you know, that's a fallacy in itself. If we look at the instrumentations and the methods they used, you know, they weren't assuming a globe. So whatever's happened along the road, they've twisted the planar understanding and how things were applied, and then, you know, twisted the mathematics to suit their concept or idea of a sphere.
That's exactly what they've done. Yep, exactly what they've done. They remodel it now. Even this whole geodetic, you know, sciences, where they're trying to get us to believe that it's all, you know, being measured by satellites in space. You know, all they're really doing there is also just reworking data and observations they had, making a model, and now they're trying to get us to believe that model, right? But it's got nothing to do with that. It's just mathematical sophistry and tabulated observations and real planar surveying where markers were put in the ground and things were measured properly. You know, even that whole science is using the same fallacy to try and deceive us that there's something up there that's actually measuring stuff. It's bull crap. Absolute bullshit. I can see it so clearly, right? I just wish I could sort of beam it into everybody's head, you know, immediately, you know, how the mathematics has been duped, you know. And it, well, I don't know what to say.
Well, I'm trying. I wish
you could bring it simpler and simpler. I know it's maybe not trivial, but
oh, well, it is. It's just because it's your line of expertise, you know, and I wish you could just beam it right into my skull. Be much easier, but I'm going to do my best to keep pushing and try and understand it as much as I can to whatever level I can get to, you know. I think it's important for other people to try and understand it as well. But, you know, appreciate that there's people like you there that are willing to share their knowledge and tear apart these things, mate. You know, it's invaluable. People like me, to be honest with you.
Well, I mean, as I say, I don't think it's difficult as long as people don't get too lost or too afraid of the mathematics. Just look at the text, the assumptions that they're making, and you can pull a lot of these books. So I've got at least 50 of those books, right? They used to write them, you know, I mean, because it was such an important thing back in them days, 150 years ago. The libraries are flooded with those books, right? How to do spherical, how to use the instruments properly to navigate. And they've all got the same underlying flaws in their assumptions and in their conceptions. And again, I'm not saying the mathematician has done it to deceive us. I'm just saying that he's basically redefining terms and words, right?
Yeah.
He believes them to be true, maybe because he had that education. And what we need to do is reclaim those words and look at them very closely and say, no, hold on. You can't just ignore something like that, or you can't just make that assumption, or you can't just redefine that word to suit your own purpose, right? Yeah. You have to look at these things, you know, the real first principles of them, and that's where the fallacies lie. And that's where I think the discernment and the empowerment will come. Doesn't have to be mathematics, but in all these different, you know, levels of discernment that we're trying to bring, yeah?
Yeah. So it was interesting, you know, just listening to looking at the word in there when they were, you know, saying, you know, the projector assume the stars to be on the outside edge of a sphere, which, you know, if I play into my whole, you know, hypothesizing, you know, the possibilities that we are actually encased in a sphere would be, you know, even more.
It will work just as well.
So I've said that to people before. Well, you know, people talk about this in a conspiratorial type arena. You know, everything they tell you is reverse, right? So, you know, let's look at the heliocentric model then. You know, the stars and you know, these luminaries are infinitely far out in the vacuum of space. We're on the outside of a sphere, and everything's calculated to the centre. So, you know, you could reverse that and say, okay, well, the stars and these things are fixed on the outside shell of a sphere. We're on the plane within it, and at any moment given time, that's us. We're at the centre of that sphere, and that's where we're measuring from. So, you know,
that was basically the old model. The Ptolemaic system is basically a geocentric one that believed in those kind of shells, yeah. And that, you know, that's the way things moved around. You know, I mean, that is basically a geocentric view of the world, and it worked for thousands of years, right? You know, everybody thought that was just fine, yeah. So yeah, absolutely. What I'm saying is the mathematics is a descriptive language that you can make your terms and definitions, as we've seen in this document, and depending on those terms and definitions, that also drives what your conclusions and the interpretation of your conclusions. So yes, we could make a descriptive mathematics tale that would show exactly the mathematics would be fine, and it would be, perfectly consistent within itself. And we could then claim just as easily, yes, the mathematics proves it's a flat Earth. What I'm trying to say is mathematics cannot be used as a proof for either of them. That's where we come back to physical substances, direct experience, common sense, and those things, which would be the next topic, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Spot on, mate. And again, I keep hearing this from people. The mathematics is all the be all and end all. It proves anything and everything. It can fucking prove whatever you want it to prove.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean that it's real. So
exactly. Yeah. So anybody trying to tell you different, or doing fake fucking competitions and challenges, it's all fallacies.
Yeah. Excellent, mate.
Just one sec, Dale. I'll be back in a minute.
That's cool. Let's see what people are saying here.
Well, I'll just pipe in there, Darren, and say it should be obvious to the people that are monitoring the chat box that the detractors who were questioning Gavin's mathematics and his description, as soon as they were invited to attend on Saturday, if you're an open platform, and discuss it, they resorted to obscene abuse.
Yeah.
Not any kind of credible argument or rebuttal, just obscene abuse. So
the man's here sitting, offering up what he's known and what he's found, and he's willing and open to discussion, and that's going to stand true for however long we're here doing this. So these people, they can hide in the comments and sling abuse all they fucking like. It's not conducive to any kind of productive understanding or progress between people. You're just not wanted and you're no welcome. Away and fucking annoy somebody else, with your childish antics. It's just not going to happen here. If you get something valid and reasonable to say and have an actual discussion, you're more than welcome. Other than that, fuck off.
Sorry, I just caught the arse end of that.
Forming is that we've got the usual shite, fucking morons offering up their nonsense in the chat, and then when they're offered to come in, they're just slinging abuse and obscenities.
Well, I'll say it again. Anybody's very welcome to come on and discuss, either directly with me, vortexpuppy@gmail.com, or hit me up with Skype, or if I'm on a Saturday, I hope they can come along and discuss it.
Exactly.
So let's see the proof. Yeah. If they think I'm some kind of fool or some kind of idiot, then point it out to me. Yeah. And again, please bring some expertise with you, though, because I'm not prepared to debate it with idiots who purport to know what they're talking about, but have no fucking clue. Are just regurgitating shite. I don't need that.
No.
Better things to do with my time.
Exactly.
But anybody who seriously wants to discuss it, very welcome.
Aye. Spot on, mate. Well, that's it. To say, you're here and you're offering yourself up, which is a lot more than can be said for any of these muppets hiding in fake accounts and hiding their identity and acting like they know something. Well, by all means, come and share it.
All right. So I've got another topic as well, though. If you're up for it, my man.
I go for it.
And this was just a quite a nice little document that I found. Hold on, let me just bring it up here. It's actually a little bit more contemporary, and it's to do with common sense and science.
Cool.
So let me just share my screen again. It's from the Journal of Scottish Philosophy, March 2016, volume 14, issue 1, by a guy called Barantes Manuel and Juan Duran. Sounds like two Spanish guys, but I quite liked what I read, and there's quite a few things in here that I quite like to point out. So they've, Thomas Reid, as you know, is one of my favourite guys. For people, again, who don't know or haven't heard me saying anything about him, this guy was a mathematician. He was a natural philosopher, a moral philosophist. He had a huge influence on the American founding fathers, of the first two presidents. The Supreme Courts all used his book as a way to judge of things. He's also hugely influential, from a mathematical, because he was a regent. He obviously learned the trivium, he learned the quadrivium, and then the divinium, which was basically what you did after you had all the groundings in science. You went on to speculate about creation, right? Which people would call divinity or theology nowadays, right? Nothing wrong with that speculation, because we always come back to this whole thing about cause, right? And this paper is, for anybody interested in it, it's a nice read. I'm just going to skip through it, and people can maybe, look this up for themselves. But basically, there's an argument that, common sense does not fit science, right? That there's some kind of contradiction between common sense and between scientific explanations. And this guy, actually, these two guys do a very good job of showing that that's not the case, And I'd just like to highlight a few of the points,
Go for it.
So one of the important things, and we've talked about this a few times as well, just between us at least and online, is that cause is the agent that exerts power. Now, what is meant by that? Is that when you're young, you automatically understand that if you want to lift your arm up, then it is you that is doing it. It is your will, it is your intention that makes your arm move. So from a very young age, we understand fully that moving is something to do with will, right? And that's actually what power means, right? Power actually means the ability to be able to do something or not to do something. And I think I've said this before, that Thomas Reid talks about active powers, and you only have two of them. You can either do something or you can leave it, right? That's all you get, right? And it's actually very telling in the situation we're in, where, I would urge people to use their active power to actually do something and not to sit there and take it all, So basically what he says is that, we should really understand that cause is an agent that exerts power, i.e. it has to be something like me and you, right? And because we are conscious of that activity, that we can willingly produce change, then I just like this sentence, the way he phrased it. We understand that the effect of the exertion of power is something that depends upon the will of its cause. So, we are the causal agents. We're the guys that make things happen, And what people get wrong, and this is where there's the confusion between common sense and science, is that people sometimes think that physical objects have active powers, but they don't. So if I say to you, for example, the wind blows, then I'm attributing a kind of active power to the wind, i.e. that it can somehow blow. But if you think about it very carefully, that's nonsense. Physical objects do not have any willpower, right? If I take acid and I put a metal into the acid, then the acid will dissolve the metal. But there is no way for the acid to decide not to do it. The acid has no choice in the fucking matter, right? All it can do is continuously dissolve metal. It's not as if it really has a power to not do it, right? To stop doing it, right? So it doesn't have will.
It's funny you're talking about this, because I've seen a wee bit with Freeman Dyson, I think it was, and he was talking about, what was the stuff he was talking about? I can't remember. I never went into to see if there was any truth in it. But it was basically the rate of decay of something, and I can't remember what the substance was, or the element, whatever it was he was talking about, that was no predictable, and he was pretty much, insinuating that, it had an active choice of when it started to deteriorate or whatever it was. It was see that wee clip I sent to you. It was actually rock migrations that mirrored that. It was a wee section in that I'd forgotten about that Freeman Dyson talks about it. Anyway, I know I'm probably digressing, but I don't know if it's in reference to what you're bringing up right now. But
No, but it's a very salient point. And the point that these guys are making in this paper is that we are apt to confuse these two things. So, you know, we run about talking as if physical objects do have actually some kind of will. But if you think about it very carefully, they don't, right? Yeah. The only things that really, you know, can make things happen are causal agents, such as me and you are sentient beings, right? Yeah. There is no way for a rock to decide to, I'll just sit here all fucking day, or I'll get up and move, you know? I mean, it's preposterous to think that they have any will or ability to cause change willingly, right? Yeah. But that's something that is within our language. And Reid was one of the first guys to ever point out that just because we sometimes see things following from something else. So you have the antecedent and the concomitant. So something comes and then something comes afterwards, like night and day, for example. So night follows day. It's been doing that since I can remember, but it doesn't mean that day causes night or that night causes day. It's absurd to think that, right? So just because two things happen one after the other, it doesn't mean that that is the same thing as cause and effect. Yeah. And that's where natural philosophy has always tried to describe the rules by which something happens. But what they always try to do is leave out any talk about what was the real cause of it, because you can't really find out what the real cause of something was, right? Yeah. It's one of these things that would appear to be impossible, to find out. I'm not saying it is. I'm saying it would appear to be, but let me just go a little bit further in this paper so that you can see. So, you know, what Thomas Reid at the time said was that the aim of science is to find the connections between natural phenomena and to describe such connections in terms of the laws of nature. Now, and he's quite right in that he also points out that that was Newton's way of philosophizing. So Newton basically said the same thing. I did not discover the real cause of why bodies fall to the earth. Yeah. All I did was find out the rules that govern the behavior of such thing. Yeah. So he's basically admitting that he's found a description, of why things could do, but he hasn't actually found out what the real cause of it is. Yeah. Now, nowadays they'll tell us that it's the molten lava and the center of mass at the beginning, you know, in the middle of a space testicle. And they'll go to all kinds of convoluted arguments as to why gravity is a real thing. But it's not. It's just a descriptive word, that tell you what the laws are that regulate bodies falling, right? Yeah. And as we know, there's various other ways to define that in different terms, like density and relative density. But I'm not going to get into that, because the main point of this was to show how words, right? So in everyday examples, we tend to say that things are caused. So we say the wind caused the leaves to move, right? But if you think about it, it's very strange that the wind is not causing the leaves to move, because the wind has no active will or power to decide, right? So if we're very careful about our words, which we should be, then we should see that we're actually misapplying that word in our common everyday language,
And again, this is where the globe nonsense comes. When you say water seeks its level, oh, water's no good at showing you will to seek its level, you know, as if that's what we're implying, when it's clearly absurd. That's not what we're implying. Yeah, exactly.
We're basically showing that those laws are fixed and periodic, and this is where common sense kicks in. So, in this paper, these guys are basically saying that there would appear to be a problem, because if common sense talks about physical objects being able to cause things, then that's not what science talks about. So there's some problem, if you like, between common sense and science. Yeah. But if you look closer into the terminology, then there actually is none. And I'm just going to flip to the part where Newton saw. So ignore this stuff with God. You know, yes, Reid was a pastor. And he believed in some kind of divinity, and I'm an agnostic in that sense, and I'm going to stay that way until I have full exploration. Yeah. But at the same time, he basically, one of his credos was, what is to be will probably be like to what has been. Now, that is a common sense idea, Dale, right? Yeah. And if you just think about it in everyday lived life, if nature did not have certain regularities in the way she works, then lived life would be impossible, right? At the moment, I can walk across the road knowing full well that the surface of the tarmac is not going to bend, swallow, open up, or dissolve in front of me, because nature's laws yesterday are probably going to apply tomorrow in similar circumstances. And that's a fairly common sense view to have, right? I don't need to demonstrate it to you. I don't need to argue with you about it. You are automatically going to say, yeah, Gav, you're right. You know, my whole experience tells me that. And that's exactly what science is basically saying. Science is also saying the same thing, that there are fixed laws that govern nature, and that we're trying to describe what these laws are. So there is no, how should I say, contradiction between common sense and science. Yeah, it's basically saying the same thing in slightly different words. And yes, sometimes words are being misappropriated or misused. And there's one very good example of this further down, which I just wanted to knock on to. I think I underlined it, at least I hope I underlined it. Well, before I get to that, there's quite a nice passage here. The confusion of various things under the name of causes is tolerated, however hurtful it may be to sound philosophy. It's not that bad, yeah? Because if something follows something else, then we desire to know what its cause is. So to give an example, a sailor desires to know the cause of the tides, that he may know when to expect high water, because that's important if he wants to get back into the harbor, right? He is told that it is high water when the moon is so many hours past the meridian. And now he thinks he knows the cause of the tides. And that's exactly the way science is playing it, right? They keep bringing up those further explanations of certain things. Everybody runs away thinking, I've got it now, right? I know exactly what it is, that it really is the cause of something, but it's not. It's just another descriptive element in the whole thing, right?
Because two things coincide doesn't mean that one's the cause of the other.
Exactly. Spot on. We also talk about things like, you know, gravitational powers and magnetic powers and electricity powers, right? And those are also causal terminology that scientists sometimes use, right? So even scientists are guilty of using those kind of words and misappropriating them, which is what happens. You know, when I see DeGrasse Tyson dropping a mic on the floor saying, hey, that's me proving gravity, then, you know, he's been a deceitful bastard, because he knows full well that that is not what science is about, right?
I mean, the guy even admits it himself, you know, in regards to that, you know, what it is, we don't actually know, but we can describe the way things fall. I mean, just as you've just highlighted here, you know, and that's exactly what he's saying, but willingly twisting people's perceptions of what he actually means.
Yep, you said it. Exactly what he's doing. Well, I'm just going to flip through a few more of these. We could talk through all this paper, but as I say, I don't want people to lose the will to live. You know, you know, there's an example here that, you know, scientists are also common people. So this is getting back to the notion that, yeah, they're not all trying to fucking deceive us, Dale, right? They're also using common people language when they talk about things. So there's an example that Reed brought about a mathematician telling his friend to invest in a business and his earnings will multiply, right? Now, these two mathematicians, when they talk about this thing, they're not looking at it as mathematicians. They're talking about it like common people. Because if they were talking about it like mathematicians, then you could multiply by a fraction and your earnings would decrease, right? So if two mathematicians agree with each other that the earnings will multiply, then they're using the common sense version of multiplication, but not the real mathematical definition of multiplication. Because, as I said, if you multiply by a fraction, you could just as easily decrease your earnings, right? So, you know, what I'm trying to say is mathematicians also employ common sense language, yeah? And this, you know, sometimes they get it wrong, and sometimes it's done deliberately to deceive us. I'm just saying that, you know, we need to be very careful and watch out for, you know, when scientists tell us stuff, exactly what words they use and in what context, yeah? And there's one more thing, you know, so Newton had one first rule of philosophizing, which he basically said was, no more causes of natural things should be admitted than are both true and sufficient to explain their phenomena.
Yeah.
Sorry, do you need to attend to that? I saw somebody barking.
Sorry about that. It was one of the neighbours that dropped a ball over the fence here.
Anyway, well, I just wanted to point out that, you know, Newton was basically of this. His first rule of philosophizing was, no more causes of natural things should be admitted than are both true and sufficient, right? And his use of the word cause is also very telling, right? Because there is no contradiction. He would appear to be again doing the wrong thing, attributing that natural objects can be the cause of things. But if you look very carefully at his definitions in his Principia, his major work, then you'll find out that the interpretation of what is true is actually referring to a proposition, right? So yes. Mathematically speaking, or rhetorically speaking, if you again look at grammar, logic, and rhetoric, when you say what is a proposition, then what Newton's basically referring to here under cause is propositions, and that a proposition needs to be true. And he's not saying that natural things or natural objects are the cause of things. This wording is very, very subtle in his Principia, but if you look at it very carefully, then it's about a proposition. It's about a sentence with an argument and premises and a conclusion that he's actually talking about, and not about a physical cause the way we would think about it. Yeah. So, and that's something again that, you know, the guy Reed pointed out, that all philosophers have fallen into that same trap. Yeah. Of not properly articulating and differentiating between these things. That true is taken as the true propositions that state the laws of nature, because, you know, a physical object can't be true, right? It's nonsense to think of that, or a cause. You know, it's a proposition he's referring to. So again, what I'm trying to say is that when here it says, you know, so while physical objects exists, only propositions can be true or false, right? So that when Newton says that a cause is true, he is actually implying that causes are propositions, and that these propositions are precisely the laws of nature. So even when they tried to make out that Newton thought differently about it, if you look carefully at Newton's words, he didn't. You know, he was actually fairly explicit, saying that I haven't really given an explanation of what pulls things to the center of the earth. All I've done is given you guys a description, and my propositions need to be true, and that's what you should look at.
Exactly.
Anyway, I hope it kind of clarifies. I think this is quite a good paper. I'd recommend lots of people to look at it. Again, what I'm trying to point out to summarize is the words used, the sophistry, so the desophication of mathematics and physics, because that's where a hell of a lot of the misapplication, the misunderstanding, and the ability that they then have to be able to confuse us and deceive us by using and redefining those words, and us basically we're at fault ourselves, Dale, in that we need to take responsibility ourselves to look into those things, right? So again, we shouldn't blame academia or education. We need to take it into our own hand and do something about it. Yeah.
You see the exact same parallels with this and law, you know, with legalese and you know, the constant definitions and redefining and changing definitions to words that we think means a certain thing in a common language, but it doesn't. It's got different meanings, and you know, it depends where it's being applied and who's using it. So it just seems like the same thing. So just as you say, you know, people need to understand these things and be careful of them.
Yep. I mean, I think they try to appeal to, you know, our imagination, our speculation, and they'll tell us all the bullshit about Star Trek and, you know, galaxies far away, and they bring in these wonderful explanations that appeal to our inquiring thing, right? Our inquisitive nature. And they play on that, obviously. So they know we're going to get all excited thinking we're going to Mars, right? And all the people getting into the education system now won't have a fucking clue about how to do spherical geometry because they're all on a mission to Mars still, right? You know, they're all caught up in the imagination of making rockets and SpaceX and Tesla cars in space and all that pish, right? I remember we dissected one poor little girl who majored in physics or whatever, and she was so full of of the things that she's been taught. And if you look back a little bit, what am I trying to say? You know, that spherical astronomy paper that I just showed?
Yeah.
Well, 14-year-olds would have been learning that if they were wanting to go to sea. You know, the education at that time would have appeared to have been a lot more, I don't know, complex and difficult and detailed. And nowadays, it's all been skipped over. They jump into university with, I want to go to Mars, right? Yeah. And they don't learn anything about this whole past of mathematics and how we got to where we are and what assumptions that we're actually having when we, do you know what I mean? They're just in there with this over-entitled excitement of being part of the generation that's going to explore space. And we've heard this shite for 50 years and it never went anywhere. Do you know what I mean? And they're still conning us with the same old shite. Yeah. Tried to. Right, exactly.
Yeah. Again, jumping in at a level, you know, before any of these assumptions and things that have been taken for granted have been proven. You know, there's a real missing section of understanding of what's actually been on, just as you say, mate. So again, you know, it's hugely important for people like yourself to step up to the mark and express them. You know, I certainly couldn't because I've not got that background. You know, I'm a fish out of water, to be honest with you, when it comes to that kind of talk. So,
well, I would find it just so difficult to do your dissection of the flat lunatics, my man. That's not my world either. And you have an excellent discernment in or you and Marshall in spotting these fuckers a mile off, you know. Because you know, I'm kind of naive in that way. You know, if I was to say to myself, right, okay, I give people credulity, I trust people on face value. I'm sure you do as well, right? Don't get me wrong, but you know, I could be seen to be naive in that respect and trusting or whatever you want, which I still think is the correct way to be, right? Don't get me wrong, but it does open you up to all these fucking shenanigans, right?
In an ideal world, I would carry myself like that all the time, but you know, I think you just become cynical and skeptical based on experiences, and particularly being involved with this topic and what's gone before, you know. So
absolutely, and you have to be, man. I mean, seeing what they're about, you know. Again, I would question their will. You know, what is it they're trying to cause to happen? Yeah, I would question exactly all these people who pretending to be, you know, lovey-dovey and everything's wonderful, and you know,
as soon as anybody's trying to shut down anybody's question in mind, regardless of what the questions are, if we've learned anything from what's went on before and what we've had to put up with, you should be deeply suspicious of that type of behaviour. You know, it should be encouraged across the board at all times for everybody to keep questioning and no rest on anything. You know,
absolutely. So, yeah, and I'd hate anybody to think that I'm sitting here thinking I'm right with everything. If I'm making mistakes, I hope somebody points them out and I can learn from them. So that's not what it's about. It's what you're saying. You know, we have to be able to question everything because that's the only way to progress is inquiry. You know, what's the point in if an answer had been given, there would be no question left, Dale. You know, if the answer was really truly visible and apparent, right, for everybody to see, we wouldn't be sitting here asking these questions, my man. You know, so they need to be asked, obviously. So.
Exactly. Aye. Well, much appreciated, mate. You know, a wee education for myself this afternoon. I'll need to get back and watch it again and try and get the grips right properly. You know, but I'm sure I can get in your ear hole in private, and you can give me some private tuition.
Aye, right. Fuck off. I'll make a couple of more videos and put them on my channel, and maybe take a bit more time for folk who are interested in it. But
again, for anyone who doesn't know, you've got a channel there with material on it. So Vortex Puppy.
Aye, I just don't. I haven't updated it in a long time. You know, to be honest, I prefer interacting with yourself or with other people, Dale. You know, when I sit there in my wee Onio trying to, you know, make up a video, it's half the fun, you know, and it seems more difficult to me. So I much prefer a dialogue, to be honest.
It's just difficult for me to give you feedback and much dialogue when it comes to this, mate. Again, you know, it's just not my field. I hope there is people that will come forward and are willing to have these discussions with you until I'm up to a level where I can even enter into a discussion, because right now I couldn't. It's, you know.
You're making it sound difficult, and here was me thinking I'd made it easy.
No, it is. I've made it easy now. I'm getting it in bits and bobs, but just to enter into a full-blown discussion with you would be virtually impossible for me. As I say, I had, you know, everybody knows I've got an overview of the things and the language and the categories that they're under, and that's where I've seen it from, without getting into the actual, you know, nitty-gritty that you can achieve. But I'm sure I'll get there. I'll keep learning.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think I'd like to just come back to summarise at least that last bit, and that, you know, common sense is the root of all natural philosophy. It's founded on it. You know, the idea that there are regularities in nature and things will be as they, you know, would be yesterday given the similar circumstances. These are all common sense ideas on which science depends to be able to make its laws, to make any mechanical thing work, right? I mean, acid is always going to dissolve metal, right? We can say that that's going to happen, right? Until, you know, and so there is no separation between common sense and science, and it's a perfectly good stance to take, in that, you know, not only is it seen by philosophers, I'm talking about Newton, I'm not talking about anybody here, he's seen it the same way, right? Or people like Thomas Reid, unfortunately forgotten, but these people have taken it seriously. So the stance that we have, that science is rooted in common sense, and that our direct observable reality is something that needs to be taken into account. We can't just throw it all out the fucking window to believe some fucking wanker's images on the screen, right? You know, people need to realize that, you know, it's a perfectly reasonable stance to take, and it's a very, very powerful one, for which even philosophy has no argument, right? So they can come all they want to the platform and talk about it.
Aye, the benefits that we have through our technology and what we're using right now is through common sense, practical application, and understanding of substances that can be demonstrated to each other and extrapolated on and further understood. That has always been, even from a layman, common man stance, that for me was what science should always been about. You know, stuff and the things that we use and incorporate in our everyday existence. And as soon as somebody's coming and talking language about things that I don't have any practicality for, that I can't reference in any way, shape or form, it has to be ignored. I have to, you know, remove it from my mind altogether. It's utter hogwash. We're entering into the realms of metaphysical fantasists that I can't deal with, you know. As I said, you know, I think we had this conversation the other night. I'm a practical guy. Even if I don't know something, you know, I'm confident enough in myself. If you can display something in a practical fashion for me and give me your descriptions, as long as the practical aspect's there, I can get it. I can understand its workings. I can put it into practice and actually know it, you know, the same as anything. Yep. So, you know, and that's the most important part for me specifically, is the practical aspect. If I don't have that, I'm not interested in it. It doesn't mean anything to me. You know? No,
and you're absolutely right to see it that way, because that is the whole foundation of all physics or all physical sciences. You know, if people try and say, no, I don't believe that, Dale. You know, honestly, you know, rigid rods can contract if they're going fast enough. Time can dilate. Space can curve, right? Then if people actually want you to give up that practicality, that common sense, to believe in that other stuff, then, you know, we should be hunting them. We should be locking the fuckers up, you know. And I don't mean because they're criminals. Maybe they are. I mean because they're you know, delusional if they think they can exchange that kind of thing for real common sense and the practicalities of science, you know. Because if you take that away, the whole of science would come tumbling down. If you take away the practical part, there's nothing left, you know. So anybody who comes here saying, "Oh, you guys keep talking about water, you guys keep talking about common sense, you guys," you know, whatever it is they try and portray us as, you know, they're full of horseshit. They've got no legs to stand on, neither philosophically nor mathematically. Yeah.
And even on a one-to-one basis, on a social level, they've got fuck all to stand on either. You know, that's how we discern and display things to each other. You know, and
exactly.
You know, the academia and all that, you know, world, just on a pure social level of one-to-one interaction. You know,
absolutely.
People are not going to come and talk hogwash at you without producing something, or you're going to fucking ignore them.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I mean, you can see that in disputes. You know, if two people are having a dispute, let's say about whatever, the lay of the land, or what property's mine and what property's yours, and they can't come to an agreement, then usually there's a judicial element that will come in, and they'll make some proposal based on a common sense, right? Yeah. You know, so that both parties, so even in our daily life, we're continuously using that to solve little disputes, or, you know, as you say, to demonstrate one thing to each other, to come to some agreement, or, you know, I mean, it's everywhere. It's pervasive, you know, and there's no way people can come and say common sense has got nothing to do with science. Without common sense, there would be no science. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, and what science are you actually partaking in? Oh, I know, globe nonsense. Because you don't get any fucking common sense if you're pushing that shite.
Right. You know? A degree in globe sophistry. Yeah, that's what you get when you...
And the degrees for becoming mentally retarded. You know? Give up your natural constitution, we'll give you a wee medal and a bit of paper and a nice wee hat. Pat
exactly.
You on your way, you know?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
It's the applied fields, it's the stuff that I'm interested in. That's what real science, the core of it is, you know?
Yep. And I mean, we've talked about this too, all this speculation about divinity and God and creation. You know, as far as I'm concerned, again, I'm repeating myself, but we need to suspend it until we have all the facts, right? Yep. All the observable phenomena through exploration, right? They need to be clear to us before I'm going to take one step further. Even though I like metaphysics as well, you know, I've got nothing against speculation, but there's no room for it in natural philosophy or in physics, yeah. As all these people have shown, you know, and through the years. So
even in a social arena, you know, it's fine to discuss, but the problem is that people are coming with a bias and an investment in some particular metaphysical belief or postulation, and it's difficult to even have these conversations with people about it because they're so invested in it. So it should never be brought into the public arena and pushed as anything other than, you know, a subjective belief, you know.
Yep.
I'm the same as you. I can only mirror what you just said, mate.
No, we need to stick to what is demonstrable, what's provable, and not speculate and stuff, not bringing any hypothesis in that contradicts, you know, again, the absurdity of bendy water, you know. It's just, it's enough. It's enough for anybody. I mean, as soon as you hear that, you should be thinking, right, absolutely, does not fucking happen, not possible. And then you should be start to looking at all the lies they're telling and trying to decipher where they're telling the lies, how they're telling the lies, and how the hell we're going to stop it. And that is through an empowerment of the people. It is through, if you like, if you want to call it an education, or getting people to discern or analyze or diagnose further. Yep. But it's certainly not just about, you know, running about saying, I've got the answer, you know. People need to do it on their own, you know.
It's not up to us, and that's purely it. People first need to have that realization and get to a direct realist stance and just say, look, I'm going to remove all and suspend all my assumptions and beliefs and things that I feel to be true and just start afresh. you know, and always base things on, just as we keep saying, what can you directly observe and test and know for yourself, and move forward from that point. That way you're not looking at any external sources, any wee groups and clubs or idols to fulfill you and give you the answers. There's no lazy option here. And if you're looking for the lazy option, then you're going to contribute and perpetuate this bullshit that we've had to be subjected to for however long, you know. I can only talk in my lifetime, but, you know, that's what it comes down to. You know, people have to have that pursuit from themselves, and always look to prove things to yourself, discern for yourself, and that's it. You know, I'm not going to keep flogging it, but
yeah, well, just to hammer it home, I will flog it, because, you know, also this idea of people looking to be entertained by scientific theories is not unsimilar to the entertainment that people seek on TV for any old shite. You know what I mean? Yeah. You know, and that's where they also need to step one step back and say, no, hold on, right? We can go so far in physics, and we can demonstrate this, and we can agree that this always happens given similar circumstances. Yeah. But, you know, stay away from the speculation and from the hypothesis, because it is a form of entertainment for a lot of people, and they seek it, right? Well, but it should be honest inquiry. Do you know what I mean?
Well, that's the difference. You know, what we're saying about the exploration and looking, and, you know, for me, that's part of the whole sophistry, the whole deception. It's offering people this entertainment aspect in order to stifle and subdue that natural, inquisitive, explorative nature, where, you know, we can find things that we've got fantastic devices and things that we've found out about the world by that exploration and direct hands-on experience. Nobody's sitting back and hearing stories about far off lands that's somehow fueling, you know, your desire, because you feel as if you can't pursue that desire because you're on this limited little fucking space rock, which is why they offer up these avenues of entertainment, and then mirror it with, you know, movies that are aligned specifically with that narrative of outer space travel and Star Wars and aliens out there and wee beings, and, you know, and it's just fueling, it's feeding into that natural aspect of humans and their curiosity. You know, but for me, it's to stifle it. It's to subdue you, to just accept you're on this wee rock. But don't worry, we've got these unattainable avenues of exploration. So there's your outlet. You know, don't get too frustrated.
Yeah, and I think, as you say, that they know that we have this inquisitiveness or this want for speculation, because we're, you know, from a young day, we're constantly seeking to find out about the world, right? You know, I mean, as a child, you're already doing it, right? You're constantly trying to find out how things work, what is happening, why is this, you know. So they appeal to that whole entertaining, speculative aspect of it, and that's what's overpowering us, you know, because sometimes it might seem unsatisfactory to say, okay, physics should only concern itself with, you know, with showing the laws that regulate or govern something that's happening, right? And shouldn't speculate. But that sounds even kind of boring already, right? People might find that unsatisfactory, but it is where they have to stop, because otherwise you have a what's it called, a kind of cascade of infinite regression. I'll give you an example to make it clearer. But so if I've got a compass and I bring a magnet close to it, then the needle will move, right? So a normal person will say, yes, the magnet made the needle move. End of story, right? Every time a needle comes close to a magnet, it will move. If a magnet's not there, it will stay stationary, right? All clear? A physicist will come along and he'll say, oh, no. It's the magnetic field lines that are causing the movement of the magnet, right? And another guy will come along and he'll say, no, it's the quantum probability cloud, associated with the observation of the magnet in space-time that is making it. And all these things are just more fanciful descriptions that will never have an end, right? It's an infinite regression. It's turtles all the way down, you know? So at some point you have to say, no, because if we go down that route, you're never going to find the ultimate cause, the final cause, the prime mover, or any of those philosophical terms. You're going to have to stop at that instance, which says, okay, I can describe this. I know it's a description. That's all I've got. And I know that tomorrow it's probably going to be pretty much like it was yesterday. And that is as far as science or physics should take you, right? Not the speculative bullshit. Yeah,
exactly. So you see, you make these observations and then you apply it and encompass it in something that's useful to you. And that's pretty much what we do as human beings, you know. I've said that before. They have us in this realm of looking at this stuff and trying to figure out how this stuff's there and what's the, you know, rather than just, let's just keep exploring this stuff. Let's just keep moving forward, pushing out, see what else we can find, you know.
Yep.
They've got us still trying to go further and further into subatomic quantum invisibleness, and, you know.
Nonsense, yeah. And I think that's deliberate, you know, as far as I can see it, is to stop the exploration outwards, you know. Yep. They're making us concentrate on the speculative, imaginative ideas, concepts in our head, and they're keeping us fulfilled and entertained by ever more absurd theories. And, you know, I mean, when you hear some of the stuff they talk about, you know, and yet it's all very elegantly, you know, I mean, you hear about gravitational lenses, which is to do with the curve of space-time, right? And then you think, okay, wait a minute, you've got a lens in your eye, your eyeball's curved, you know, and space-time curved, and so you can see where they're using, if you like, these everyday words just to bamboozle us.
Extrapolating from something physical, tangible, into something that's just. I mean, how can you bend something that's not even there? Space and time. I mean, what the fuck are they talking about? What is it you're bending? No, nothing. It was crap, man. Interesting enough, you were talking about that. You know, I seen somebody made a wee video. I'd actually read it on my teletext. You know, sending helicopters to fucking Mars and all this now, and, you know, people are all getting excited about it. And there's now a Scottish, you know, space agency, and they're going to be launching a rocket satellite next year, but not from Scotland. It's from Canada or fucking Alaska or some fucking thing like that. You know, but interesting. You know, the wee guy done a video talking about it, and he's got a vacuum chamber. He puts a fan in there, powered by the battery, so that the propeller will still spin. Places a feather in front of it, dangling from a fucking string, vacuums it out, turns it into a vacuum, switches the fan on, feather doesn't move. You know, again, asking the questions, how do helicopters work again? You know, I mean, even going into the conditions of what they profess the conditions are on Mars. So the boys try to get the conditions just to the way they've described it. And fuck all's happening. So again, when we go to the practical applications of what they're telling us, go to direct reality and see what it's telling you. You know it's fucking horse shit.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. No, exactly. No. Yeah. And again, I'll say it again, just to how should I say, to capture the honor of mathematicians, physicists. They're not all out to deceive us. I just don't think they're looking carefully at the history of what's happened, how things have been changed from the use of words, the interpretation, the assumptions. So yes, there are actors amongst us, paid actors that are you know, definitely doing it deceitfully, but there's not a conspiracy about the academic world. I mean, there's still people that really do believe that spherical geometry is a ball. Mathematicians will tell you that, Dale, right? Because they don't even know their own definitions and they haven't read their own books, you know.
It's the same as everything else, mate. You know, it doesn't matter what walk of life you're in. It could be a trade like I was in, and you get into that trade, and people will say, well, this is the way it's always been. This is how it was done. This is how we understand it to be done. And then somebody goes, well, wait a minute, thinks a bit differently about it, and comes up with something new and goes, no, that's not the way. You know, I've found a new method, a new way here. So, you know, all the people that were involved in the trade of motor engineering and mechanics were they lying? No. It's just what they were told as they entered into that specific role, and then some of these people will not settle for that. They'll think about it. They'll come up with new ways and formulate new technologies, different methods of approach, and they work. But if you were to just go away, that's the way it's always been, and you know, nothing would fucking change, nothing would advance. So, again, it's not everybody's lying.
No,
you know?
and that the only way to, I think, you know, to counter that is to keep having active discussion amongst people, right? And that's where, you know, maybe to take this back right to the beginning, you know, where, you know, going onto the streets and being active, awakening people, yes, that's one thing that is good. It can be done, right? But the real progress comes when we all start to have an inquiring, you know, mind where we discuss amongst each other, and not when it has to be filmed. I mean, we have to do it in everyday life. We have to do it with everybody we encounter in every situation. We need to get people inquiring and thinking and empowered, right? And not just, you know, for whatever, for a flash in the pan. Do you know what I mean? or for instant gratification for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That's not going to get us anywhere.
No.
You know?
No. Certainly not. You know, it comes right down to that, you know, and that's the most important thing. Being armed and equipped to be able to engage with people, and at the same time you have to be able to point people in the direction of proper discernment and how their mind is actually working, you know, or you're just going to have a populace of the same again, you know, leaving it up to other people to organise and arrange it for them while they can just live in apathy and ignorance. You know? Nothing's going to change. You're just going to end up back at the same place again. It might be rosy and lovely for, you know, the first while, and then eventually it's going to deteriorate back into corruption and self-service, and before you know it, we're back at square one. Doesn't matter what paradigm you're in.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So,
No, absolutely.
yeah. Well,
oh man, the wife brought me something to eat, so I think I'm just going to
start
into that. And
I'm going to go.
Thank you once again for the chat, and it's always a pleasure to speak to you, my man.
The thanks is to you today, mate. Much appreciated. You know.
Right. Well, hope to see everybody on Saturday. I think there was talk about, you know, doing something on Saturday, maybe.
Aye.
With a bigger panel as well.
Aye. Well, hopefully we can get that arranged. You know, it'd be good to have that. I would really like that, but we'll see how it goes. You know.
Yep. I'm game.
Be a bit at the weekend at some point, Saturday, defo. You know, maybe a bit earlier. I'm not sure. I'll see how things pan out.
All right, my man.
Available. All right, mate.
Well, thanks for that. Thanks, Marshall. Thanks, everybody.
Nice one, Gav. I'll see you Saturday, mate.
See you all soon. Yeah. Take care.
Cheers,
Take it easy, mate. Right. Quick close in the chat, and then I'll be getting off myself. Glenn Parent, Mr. Golden V, Leroy Foster, Andrew Calvert. Yep. I can only mirror the thanks to Gav for his efforts. Willing to step up. You're awake. Your wake up call. How are you doing? John Shelton, John Tho, Stephen Owens, Plain Polixis, Sandy 123, Brent Humphreys, Sheeps, Maggie M. Right. Just giving everybody a wee quick shout out. There's Jamie Brown's going live for anybody that's interested in going and checking out what he's up to there. Merrill. Right, people. It's been a pleasure as always. Thank you very much, Gav, Marshall, Magumba, Jonah Worms, Des. Much appreciated as always. I'll see you at the weekend. Take it easy, people.